information. We do that through a climate action plan questionnaire, which Grace has actually already filled out for us quite nicely. We then create a climate vulnerability assessment. So we're going to look into climate change history and projections for the community, identifying climate risks, mapping vulnerable populations throughout the community, analyzing those findings based on both the risks and our vulnerable populations, and then summarizing city-specific risks and hazards. And that will be at both the sort of infrastructural level, at a high level, and also at a population level. And then we'll pull that together into a report documentation and as well as an infographic. We'll also create a greenhouse gas inventory. We are looking at 3 subject years, 2013, 2016, and 2019, for both city operations as well as citywide emissions. Our report will include trends analysis, community comparisons, both within the state of Minnesota as well as regionally and a little bit within the eastern United States. We will generate emissions forecasting, also known as business as usual. So basically what would happen if we don't do a climate action plan? What's the likely emission trends over the next 10, 20, 30 years? And then again, pull that together into a report document and an infographic. We'll also generate a renewable energy potential study. That will include modeling solar PV potential, rooftop solar PV potential throughout the city, understanding the solar market within the state, understanding the solar market within the city, and then developing scenario planning or potential goals. And so our purpose for doing this is we've actually seen a number of climate action plans, municipal level plans that might say something along the lines of, hey, we want 50% renewable energy by 2030 or something along those lines. And we do want to create goals. And we've seen some where, frankly, the goals are not just aggressive, but perhaps not actually possible to achieve. And so we want to help balance strong goals with also achievability. So that's part of the reason why we do this. We will also do a community-wide ground cover baseline assessment. So that's going to do, we're going to start off with evaluating ground cover by census tract, looking at carbon sequestration baseline by census tract, as well as tree canopy benefit. We'll look at heat island coefficient by census tract based on our impervious surface and pervious surface ratios and relationships. And then we'll identify potential goals related to tree canopy, native grass, and heat island mitigation, all of those again by census tract. And as you recall, the vulnerability assessment, that information will also be mapping vulnerable populations by census tract. And so we can create relationships between all of these based on census tract, vulnerable populations, solar PV potential, and ground ground cover potential, all by census tract. All of this then will come together into a climate action baseline assessment and strategic goal recommendations report. So in that, we'll establish potential pathways for carbon reduction. We will summarize relevant data for each of the climate action plan sectors. We will then also identify draft potential strategic goals by sector based on the data that we've compiled and the analysis that we've put together. And then we will model the GHG reduction by sector based on those potential strategic goals. And then all of that gets pulled together into a document that actually will be put in place before the beginning of the planning effort. And the reason for that is that we want to make sure that we're grounded in data and that we're putting together robust background information in a succinct document that the planning team can explore and begin with as a point of departure. So it doesn't mean that they have to accept the recommendations, for instance, but it gives them a place to begin their debate and discussions. So as far as leveraging broad stakeholder wisdom, that's how we think of our actual planning team itself. This little chart tries to illustrate the sort of flow of relationship of input and plan development for Edina. So we'll have community input, which I'll talk about in a little bit. The roles for the community input, of course, are to provide initial input on and feedback on the goals, strategies, and opportunities for the CAP plan, and then also to provide feedback on the draft plan when we get to that point. That inputted information will go into the climate action planning team. The role of the CAP planning team will be to, of course, review community input, review baseline assessment information, receive input from this commission, the EEC, and then to collaboratively co-create the strategic goals and the detailed actions of the CAP plan. So we will facilitate a very collaborative process with that team in the actual creation of the plan. We have found that that is our best way to create a very community-specific climate action plan, or as community-specific as we can create together. All of that information, of course, throughout that process will be interacting with the EEC. With Grace, we'll kind of coordinate appropriate stepping points to come back. The EEC's opportunity here, we're anticipating that role is to receive intermittent updates from the CAP team progress, to provide feedback and input to the CAP team at those appropriate intervals, to review and provide feedback on the draft CAP plan when we get to that point, and then ultimately to recommend the final CAP to the City Council. And then, of course, that interaction with the City Council, we anticipate that they'll be providing direction and guidance on key decision points along the way, a couple sort of stop points perhaps, and making final decisions regarding the goals, strategies, and the plan document, and approving, of course. So the makeup of the climate action planning team itself, our suggested structure here that we're throwing out for consideration. First, having EEC representatives, and it could be 3 or 4 or more. So we're always happy to have as many participants as appropriate there. City staff who can help serve as experts in the various sectors, so folks that are already aware of what the city's doing related to stormwater management or what have you. Allied public agency who also can serve as expert in a few key critical components. For instance, county staff, watershed folks for stormwater management, etc., public health experts, etc. That's usually maybe 2, possibly 3. And then community members. And so we're suggesting that the community members, we could think of that in sort of 3 kind of groupings of folks. The first would be people who can help represent the traditionally underrepresented populations or marginalized demographics. The second sort of grouping would be general resident representatives. And then the third would be business community representatives. So could be business owners or folks from Rotary and the Chamber of Commerce, perhaps, that sort of thing. So we're looking at probably a total planning team of 18 to 23 folks, somewhere around there. And that's usually, it's pretty good size. That's usually what we work with. It can be different, so if things change, that's okay. So the process that we have for managing a large climate action planning team, and to do that in a collaborative process, first we've mapped out here sort of a draft work plan, and it comprises, this is sort of all of the interaction for the CAP team in one sort of somewhat busy graphic. But it's a total of 7 meetings with a little bit of homework between some of those meetings. The first 2 and the last meeting are a little bit shorter and more kind of presentation, sort of grounding base meetings. The middle 4, though, are true heavily interactive workshops. So they're very fun sort of interactive opportunities. And the bulk of the meeting is the team working with each other. We recommend organizing the planning team into sub-teams based on climate action sector. So usually the team's going to end up being something like maybe 4 to 7 folks in each sub category. And then we anticipate, or we usually suggest, that each sub team selects or identifies a coordinator or a lead that can just sort of help that sub team kind of facilitate the dialogue and make sure everybody is heard, for instance. We have a number of tools that we use along the way to support the planning team in the creation of strategies. The first tool, or the core tool, is the Action Finder tool. It is a searchable database of about 4,000 strategies now that are organized by climate sector. And it provides an interactive platform for team members. So as we've been working with communities, one of the earlier observations that we had was that the most enjoyable plans and the most effective plans were the plans that had the greatest level of collaboration. And we also discovered that people, as they collaborate on this, we have people that are coming from a range of backgrounds. Some folks that may feel very versed in climate considerations, some folks who may actually be pretty versed, but they don't feel very comfortable that they are, or others that maybe just don't have much background in it, but they have great background in the community. They understand their community. And all of that kind of background is excellent. And we found with those different backgrounds, some people take to how to create an action or what an action might feel like very comfortably, and other people not so much. So we wanted a tool that could first give people a place to go to explore what other communities are doing, find ideas that they kind of like, also create a venue where we can actually create new actions together, and a venue where the team can kind of talk to each other while they're doing it. So that's what the Action Finder does. It's a highly searchable database where people work together in the exploration, development, and refinement of detailed climate actions. So as we kind of get to the point of having draft actions, we'll be, of course, producing long-range emission reductions related to the strategies created. We will work together to prioritize the various actions. Prioritization usually happens through both GHG reduction potential, but also, very importantly, community-specific selection criteria, review criteria that we'll create together to sort of help rank how one action might be better or not quite as good as another action for Edina. And ultimately, we'll be creating and identifying implementation sort of roles, potential advocates and partners, budgetary information, etc. So while we are doing this sort of planning process, actually before the planning process and then through the planning process and after the planning process, we'll be doing community engagement focused on recognizing community needs. The goal is to cultivate community co-ownership. And we're going to be looking to identify the communities that make up the overall Edina community with a particular attention to historically under-resourced or underrepresented populations. We kind of look at it as sort of the 80-20 rule. We want to make sure that we get everybody's input. And typically what we find in communities is that, you know, there's a lot of folks that we hear from quite a bit, and that's fantastic. And we want to make sure that we hear from them. But we also want to make sure that we hear from the folks that maybe we're not used to hearing from, or who have a difficult time being able to connect into the process. So we kind of think of it as the 80-20. We're going to put about 80% of our effort trying to connect with people that typically aren't connected with to the very best extent that we can. And then 20% of our effort to make sure that we absolutely hear from everybody as well. And we find that that tries to, you know, create as much of a balance as possible to get the broadest possible input. We also are going to be providing a youth engagement effort. This specific effort could be a range of things, or one of a range of things. We've done in the past youth engagement design thinking forums that empower youth to think about solutions that they're excited about, or how they might engage in climate adaptation, climate action implementation in the future, projects that they're interested in supporting, etc. We've also created curricula that can support that. Or it could be youth focused sort of pop-up engagement events. So there's kind of a range of potential there, and we'll design with the city exactly what that is. But the idea of making sure that we are very intentional about connecting with youth in this process. We also will have surveys to put out there for the community. We're anticipating a survey starting shortly this month. We hope to get that out. That will just sort of provide an opportunity for everybody to just give us their initial input, their reactions, what they're aware of, opportunities they see, fears they have, etc. So just sort of a grounding in where the community is right now and any ideas that they might have. Then we'll do a second survey. We're anticipating as we create the draft plan, probably issuing a second survey so that there'll be digital opportunities to provide input on the draft plan, as well as some engagement opportunities. And then lastly, just talking a little bit about transitioning into action. We have some implementation tools that we will be producing towards the end of the project here. In addition to the sort of the CAP plan itself, the first is an implementation matrix. That will be a live database, Excel-based database that will be a tool that will provide to Grace and staff. That will have all of the actions organized in a searchable document that allows very rapid coordination of different actions. You can search and collapse based on priority, implementation year, implementing party. You can search for specific actions or actions with keywords, etc. So it's intended to be a tool to help rapidly kind of organize implementation along the way. It will also have opportunities to kind of track implementation or monitor implementation, the progress of actions. We also will be producing example climate action policies and ordinances. We maintain a database of relevant policies and ordinances. I have no life. I do this stuff all the time. So we're always kind of developing the database further as we run across really cool policies and ordinances. We add it into our database. And then as the Edina Climate Action Plan sort of bubbles to the surface here, we start getting a plan. We'll peruse through that and identify potential policies or ordinances that might be in that plan or referenced in that plan. We'll pull them out of our database and also do a fresh search to see what we can find so that we can give to the city sort of a database of potential policies that can be learned from. We'll also be producing a few guides that are intended to be tools that the community can use as you implement CAP plan. So the first is a net zero energy building guide, which is intended to be sort of a design partner in the process of exploring high energy efficiency buildings or net zero energy buildings. So we're going to develop that pro bono. We'll also be doing a solar ready guide pro bono, which will talk about what building owners, designers, and contractors should be doing to make buildings solar ready. So if you can't get solar on there right now, what are you going to do to make sure that solar is going to be an easy add in the future? And then also an EV ready guide that is, we'll kind of walk through the technology, the charging technology, what's coming out down the road in the next handful of years, help people figure out how to calculate how many charges they might need for a fleet, how to transition the fleet from gas to EV, that sort of thing. And then we'll also be creating a climate action implementation communications concept plan. That's a lot of words on one title of one thing, but basically it's a conceptual plan about communications is clearly it's important during the planning process, but in terms of climate action, it's maybe even more important once the plan is put together and we have implementation, because a climate action plan really ultimately is about influencing and encouraging and promoting our residents and our businesses. So that sort of putting together a concept of what are some of the things that Edina can do conceptually around implementation communications. So we'll put together a plan about that. And then our schedule, just to touch on real quickly here. So we're doing all that sort of background documentation right now, and we're starting some of our initial outreach, looking for community outreach partners for underrepresented populations, et cetera. And we're going to be aiming towards having our climate action plan team engagement starting in April. Our first meeting will probably be somewhere in the second half of April. That'll get refined once we kind of have our team assembled and we can identify a starting date that works well for the team. So I'll be going through April through September. We'll have a draft plan happening through that time frame, and a draft plan ready for review by September. And then the climate action plan finalization in November and December is what we're looking at. So that's our little presentation. I'm open for any questions or comments that'd be helpful. Do you want me to just go ahead and field questions, or Hilda, do you want to do that as chair?
Yeah, no, I saw Terry wanted to do a question, so I was giving her the. You can open your mic and do the question, Terry.
I was just curious, when you were talking about, I just wrote some notes down while you were speaking. When you were talking about assessing ground cover in the city, and you were doing that by census, are you just doing that by averaging somehow, or you're not going to physically go out and check each site? Because I know that's kind of one of the complaints Edina has, is that the larger homes have built on such a large part of the lot that there's so much more impervious surface than there used to be.
Yeah, that's a fantastic question. So there are a few ways to do ground cover surveys. Mm-hmm. The process that we suggest and that we follow is it has a pretty high accuracy level, but it's also very repeatable. And so we use a tool called iTree Canopy. It was a tool that was put together by the U.S. Forestry Service. And so what you do is we will be taking digital readings of the site, and we do that by census tract, and we'll end up with something like, 600 to 1,000 readings per census tract, and be classifying each of those point readings as whether it's a tree cover, grass cover, native grass, impervious pavement, impervious building, etc. And basically, the way the tool works is you continue to take readings until you hit the degree of accuracy that you're looking for. And we usually go until we have at least about a 2% sensitivity level or accuracy level.
Okay.
And so with that, we can then calculate benefits of the tree canopy, energy savings potential based on the tree canopies. We can calculate carbon sequestration, heat island impacts, water runoff, and water uptake. So a lot of data we can generate from that level of information.
Is it like an infrared type reading, or is it more of a visual reading?
It's a visual reading.
Okay.
And the cool thing is, so then those files we can provide to the city, and in 5 years or whatever, you can actually take those files and redo that. And it's pretty easy to, you can teach elementary students how to do it, or high school students. It's kind of fun, actually. So it's easy to repeat is where I'm going.
But can it give you a breakdown of like what is hardscape versus what is landscaping with the tree canopy cover? Yeah.
Yeah, the way, well, yes and no. So the way you want to read it is if you are looking at what would be covered by a tree, mm-hmm. you calculate it as tree cover, even if it might be over pavement. But if from a satellite, if you would be seeing tree, you want to count it as tree.
Okay, so you can't, that's not really a tool that you would use then to get like stormwater runoff management type information.
You can generate, I mean, approximate runoff.
Okay.
So the point that Terry had initially around permeable surfaces and impermeable surfaces, so it doesn't really get to that. It provides what is, sorry, I'm turning on my camera. So it provides what is tree covered and what is not tree covered. It doesn't get to the permeability of the surfaces under it.
Well, it does. It gets from permeability from the perspective of a satellite view or from the sun. So, and the purpose for that is from the perspective of, say, heat island. If you have an impervious surface covered by tree canopy, you get the benefit of the cooling from the tree canopy. So the reading is intended to kind of provide an amalgam that you can use for good approximation for water uptake and water runoff, as well as a good approximation for heat island impacts or potentials, as well as overall tree canopy and grass coverage. So that reading allows you to sort of calculate a number of different benefits so that you can sort of tweak where do you want to put your priorities in any given neighborhood.
Okay.
And I'll just chime in briefly to mention that part of Pale Blue Dot's work builds off of existing city reports. And so in the case of impervious surface studies, the city has a report from 2016 and a report from 2020 related to the development of the city's flood reduction and resilience strategy. So we're sharing those reports with Pale Blue Dot, and that helps inform this ground cover study and add some of that necessary context that Terry and Rajiv are getting at.
Thank you, Chris. That helps. Can I ask more questions, or do I need to?
Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
Okay. So two-part question. The first is, when you use satellite data for study, unless it's a study that's being done by the computer itself, by image recognition, there is a significant amount of perception distortion. So how do you account for that? That's one. And the second one is, when you come up with the action plans or action plan tool and all things that are associated with that, is there a way to understand financial and other unforeseen implications of each of the actions and what is associated with each of those actions?
Okay, I may need you to repeat the second one when I get there. But so the first question, so there is definitely, I mean, there's a potential for user error or perception issue. The bigger issue actually has less to do with the observer and more to do with the actual satellite images that are used, because the satellite images, if you've ever used a lot of Landsat data, you'll see that from one image to another, the perspective changes slightly. Mm-hmm. So of course, we're ideally trying to look straight down in that kind of a reading. So there is a degree of inaccuracy, but as I say, we aim the tool itself that we use, the iTree tool that was developed by Forestry Service, is designed to help you get it to whatever, I mean, you can't get it to 100% accurate. That's going to be impossible. They recommend aiming at a accuracy of 98% and better, and it'll tell you as you take readings where you're at on that. And so the other thing that I'll say about the intention of the tree canopy and ground cover study, this will sound awkward, but it's not 100% accuracy is not necessarily needed, in that really what we're trying to do is to help understand the order of magnitude of the various opportunities, challenges, and issues within the community on a census tract by census tract basis, so that when you get into action identification and development in green space or heat island reduction or energy consumption, you can have sort of a dashboard with these dials that help you decide, well, you know, actually maybe tree cover is not such a bad, it's not so bad in this area, but boy, we really have to do something related to heat island impacts, which are going to be like dark impervious surfaces, for instance. So 100% accuracy, although it'd be fantastic, is ultimately not necessary in terms of helping the team sort of establish order of magnitude actions that should be appropriate and where they might be most appropriately applied, if that makes sense. So, and I'm sorry, would you mind repeating the second question?
Sure. The second question was around actions. Right. So you mentioned that there's going to be an action plan, and then there's a action planning tool available to the pack as well. Wanted to understand if, as you plan and develop actions, how do you estimate and how do you plan for intended and unintended consequences of those actions, financial and others associated with those?
So when you're when you're thinking unintended consequences.
So what have you learned about unintended consequences for actions that are proposed? And then what are the financial implications of those actions? How are those measured and managed? Okay.
Well, first of all, so usually what we do is we will create budget approximations for the detailed actions. Some detailed actions will have no budget associated with them. There might be some staff time, for instance, but if we think there's already staff available to do a specific action, then there's probably, it's already covered in the staff costs, for instance. But we'll tend to put together sort of budget ranges for each of the actions that might be something like from 0 to 15 grand, and then maybe 15 grand to 30 grand, and then maybe 30 grand and above, sort of a thing. And the intention there is to give a sense of order of magnitude of costs, but the specific costs for many of the actions really will end up needing to be explored as the city implements each year. And part of the reason for that is that, it's a 10-year plan. So if an action ends up being implemented in 5 years or 6 years, any kind of a detailed budget that was put together is going to be almost meaningless at that point in time. You really have to come up with a detailed budget at the time. And secondly, the effort of coming up with a detailed budget for all of the actions is just somewhat prohibitive. So what we want to do is we want to provide enough information that the city can make appropriate choices moving forward. It's very similar to what you might do for a comprehensive plan, where you may have a sense of budgets coming out of a comprehensive plan, but most communities don't necessarily have a detailed to the dollar estimate for all of those actions, again, because it's sort of implemented over a range of time. We also tend to generate potential economic savings related to the actions that are in the plan. That might be sort of community-wide economic savings that could be the consequences or the result of a successful implementation. So for instance, if we have goals of reducing X number of kilowatt hours by 2030, for instance, that's a goal that we can assign a dollar value to, because we understand what folks are paying per kilowatt hour today. So that can be calculated. As far as unintended consequences, I'm not entirely sure how to answer that per se. So I think I don't have an answer for that right now. I'm sorry.
That's fine. Thank you. Thank you.
Anybody else has questions?
I have one, Hilda.
Yeah, go ahead, Corey. I'm sorry. Okay.
Tom. Yeah.
Sorry, I gave the word to Corey. I didn't see you. Can you wait after Corey? Thank you.
So this is a question either for Ted or potentially Hilda and Grace. The state has a climate action plan. The county has a climate action plan. For those of us who are relatively new to this, can you kind of educate us on what the expectation is of a city level climate action plan? Are we trying to execute the state and county strategy and applying it to what we're doing in the city, or is it an opportunity to set different strategies that might contradict with the state and the county? I'm just trying to educate myself a little bit more on how you, Ted, and Grace and Hilda see this playing out in comparison to some of the other plans.
I know that. I can try to answer this, and maybe Grace, you can complement. Look, the mitigation goals from the state is based on the Next Generation Act that it was published in 2007, and they want to reduce, I think, is 25% by 2030. I'm not sure, and 80% by 2050. I know that the same goals were input in the Hennepin Climate Action Plan, but several organizations and several cities are trying to push it to be a net zero plan, goal instead. I think Edina has a goal. The Edina goals, these were long set, are based on the Next Generation Energy Act. We haven't discussed that, but we will. Well, from my point of view, we should try to seek for a much more ambitious goal. But I guess this is going to be part of the discussion, because although even though the state has a different plan and maybe Hennepin stays with the 80% plan, I think we should try to push for a better goal. So I guess this is, I don't know if Grace wants to say anything, but I guess it will be part of the discussion of the plan.
Yeah, thanks, Hilda. And Corey, that's a good question, because I know Hennepin County is wrapping up its climate action plan now. And I believe, in fact, we'll be hearing a presentation from them at our April meeting on their plan. But Hilda's exactly right that within the municipal context, we have both, we have local land control. So we can look at our land use planning and our zoning code and determine at the local level, are there ways that we can adjust the way the city is managed to accelerate action on climate. The state and the city of Edina followed to set greenhouse gas reduction goals. Of the first goal was 15% by 2015. The state missed that goal, the city missed that goal. And so we are looking at what can we do at the municipal level to set goals based on the latest science. We understand better than ever the urgency of climate change 14 years after the Next Generation Energy Act, apologies, was passed. And we have a lot of tools in our toolbox at the municipal level that we can use to push things a little harder, a little faster, a little bit more ambitiously. So we are taking the county and the state action plans into consideration, but really trying to understand what does our local context tell us about the opportunities here.
And from an implementation tools perspective, and what Ted showed, you're talking, Ted, about the ability to influence businesses. But Grace, do we at a municipal level have any enforcement mechanisms, or is it all trying to convince businesses and neighborhoods that they should kind of take action?
Yeah, you are seeing into the future of part of my staff comment this evening about the city's developing sustainable buildings policy. The city does have some local control to regulate the business community as far as requiring them to report energy use. The city already does that through our building energy benchmarking program. We require any structure 25,000 square feet or larger to report their energy. And we're looking ahead at how to bake in energy efficiency for new buildings that would qualify for that. So we do have some tools in our toolbox to move forward that action. But I think something that maybe you're kind of hinting at is that another benefit of a local action plan is it gives us and our city manager and our mayor a platform to speak, to advocate with the state and nationally for more aggressive climate actions.
Okay, yeah, that's what I was getting at. Okay, perfect. Thank you.
And if I may just sort of expand on that, that's a lovely answer. I find that, so most CAP plans, you will have kind of a range. You'll have some things that are more requirements, and you'll have some things that are educational. We're trying to educate folks, and then we'll have some things that are encouraging, or examples. And even those areas that are requirements, you'll find that sometimes you need influencing or encouragement related to those also, to just kind of help people get over the hump of, why are you now telling me that I should be doing A, B, and C, right? So we tend to think of it in all of those kinds of actions.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Okay, Tom, go ahead.
Oh, thanks, Hilda. Actually, Corey got at kind of the heart of some of the things I was thinking about, so I'm good. Thank you.
Okay, sorry. Anna?
My question is like kind of like related to Corey's question, but is there gonna be, since you said, like you mentioned, it's gonna be like a 10-year plan and it doesn't like really align with like the goals exactly like based on the days of the next generation standards. Yeah. Is there gonna be like an overall goal, or is it just gonna be like strategies and actions to like obviously like address climate change, but is there gonna be like an overall goal at some point?
That's a superb question, and of course we'll design that together to define what those goals really should look like and how they are put together. What we typically find is, communities that may have a robust goal, like we're going to get to 100% carbon free or carbon neutral or net zero, or even 80% reduction, like the state. That's a pretty robust goal, and a goal that's probably going to take more than 10 years to get to. And so what we usually end up recommending is, if you have a robust goal, that you try to establish that you want to be a stretch. You want to stretch the goal to make it something that we're reaching for. You also want it to be like where we think we can hit it. Even we may have to work hard to get there, but we think we can get there. And then usually it's good to have a goal that's closer, a sub goal that's a little bit closer, that in 10 years is a reasonably good planning time frame, because it's long enough out there that you can think of some long-term things. You have some time to put things in action, but it's not so long that now so much time has elapsed and a whole bunch of actions are no longer relevant. So you do want to kind of revisit this, and we will recommend that the action plan is reviewed for implementation at regular intervals, maybe every other year, could be annually, could be every 3 years, but with some regular intervals, and then to update the plan probably at 10 years. That's a pretty good time frame, because by then technology's changed, demographics could change. There's all sorts of things that could be in movement that is worthy to revisit what we're wanting to do, or how we're doing it, I should say.
That you have a question? Go ahead, John.
Hi, thanks. So this is related to Corey's question. It's a little bit different though. So there are a lot of outside forces that aren't necessarily related to climate action plans, but are going to be really important at the contextual level, county level, state level. I'm thinking of something like electrification and the role of like a major utility. How do you account for the evolving energy mix over the next 10 years? I mean, let's say Excel finds some way to flip a switch to be 100% renewable in 2026. Obviously, that's pie in the sky, but let's just say that happened. How does that impact this type of planning? And is there a mechanism in this process for almost predicting that and then folding those predictions into the plan?
That's a good question. So what we will do is, a part of our business as usual projections, we will be putting into those projections what our current commitments or statements. Well, commitments. We don't want to bake in if it's kind of a dreamy statement, but if Excel does have specific goals that they have put on out there that they are going to hit. Now, of course, they could miss them, but they have made specific commitments to goals. So those will be part of the calculations and assumptions within the business as usual case. And so that will tell us kind of where Excel would get us if we don't do anything further, and then help us figure out where that gap might be for the community to hit the community's goals. And then as far as like the flipping the switch, which can happen. So Excel or other Centerpoint, all these different entities, that it's a big moving ball of participants here. They all have plans or commitments. So the commitments we try to reflect in the projections. But 3 years from now, Excel could change. Something could happen. I mean, who knows? Maybe they get a windfall. They beat their goals. They get it done faster. Something happens with their stakeholders, and they decide that they're not gonna that they're changing their commitments. They're not going to do what they said they were going to do. Well, who knows what could happen, right? So that is why we suggest kind of reviewing the progress of the CAP plan at some regular intervals, because it allows the opportunity to just simply sit back and say, okay, has anything significant changed here related to any of the policies that we're trying to work with in our CAP plan. So it's both baked into the projections as best we are able to, and then the recommendation of doing just sort of recheck-ins at regular intervals is a way of a mechanism of trying to help make sure if something significant changes, you can reevaluate where you're prioritizing your efforts.
Anybody has questions? Okay, I have several questions. I promise to be short. Ted, based on what you mentioned that it's only a 10-year action plan, your forecast, how long does it goes? And well, that's one question. And I also want to know a little bit more about how you plan to do this community input and engagement. I don't know if you can still hear me, because I don't see you. Can you? Yeah, but I don't know if I am okay. I would like to know a little bit more. How do you think of involving the community, which is, I think it's the first part you're gonna do. Well, it has several stages, right? But I guess hearing from the community, it's important, but I would like to know a little bit more how you're planning to engage with them. And just want to confirm that this last thing you said about the communication plan, is it like the monitoring? It has to do with like monitoring and verifying that the plan is on track? That's a question. Those are my 3 questions.
Okay, if I forget one, please remind me. And I may have already figured out one. Okay, so the forecasting, the business as usual forecasting, we usually project 30-year. It gets a little bit ridiculous to try to project further than that, because already at 30 years, there's a lot of assumptions in there, like, well, is Excel going to hit their goals? You know, what's happening with EV adoption? I mean, there's so many things that could, you know, between now and 2050 that to go further than that really is, you know, it's not very useful. And but the projections will go 30 years. We usually find 10 years you feel pretty good about. 20 years you feel reasonably confident in. It starts getting a little wiggly. At 30 years, though, as I say, that's about the limit of what I think anybody can do a projection with any kind of meaning whatsoever.
So that's your forecast, and then your actions, your mitigation actions, go only for 10 years. That's correct? Okay.
Yes. And the reason for that, I mean, we can do a 15-year plan or we could do a 20-year plan. I advise against it because much like for comp planning, you know, a community updates their comp plan every 10 years. And it's in part because, you know, you can kind of see out 10 years the kinds of detailed actions that are going to be appropriate. But by the time you start getting to 10 years and beyond, there's enough space for change that if you don't update it, you are likely going to be sorry. For instance, you know, today, looking at 2030, how many EVs are going to be on the road? There is a very wide range of projections about EV adoption between now and 2030. And I have my opinions on what that'll look like, but one thing I can tell you for certain is by 2030, we'll have a much better idea what EV adoption is going to look like between 2030 and 2040. Because, I mean, so much will be in play that right now we're thinking is going to be in play, right? So as one example, if you try to have detailed actions that go beyond a 10-year window, you are starting to get into a territory where it's a little difficult to feel confident or comfortable that these detailed actions will continue to be relevant or appropriate or prioritized outside of 10 years. So that's why we tend to suggest a 10-year plan. And then the reduction modeling relates to that 10-year window because that's the span of those implementation actions, right? Okay. We don't usually do it, but I mean, if somebody was interested, we could play out, well, if you kept doing those actions out another 10 years, what would reductions look like? But I tend to suggest against that, again, just because a number of those actions we know will probably lose their potency or their prioritization after a while. You'll start deciding, okay, that's done, that's great. Now we really want to refocus our energies over here as things evolve. Okay, so that was one. I'm sorry. Already, I forgot the other two.
The second one was related with the community input and engagement. So
Awesome.
like, if you plan to do like, I don't know, well, in these times it's difficult to do like meetings or gatherings, or so how do you plan to bring them into the discussion and to have more from them that only like, how do you like, you know, that have a real participation of the community, like there's really a representation of the community?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I'm going to give you a somewhat general answer only because the specific plan is still being produced. So we have a community engagement partner. Transformational Solutions is the name of the entity. Huda Ahmed is the leader there and our partner. She's fantastic. And so as the first thing I can say with confidence is, and this is what we had suggested even when we were interviewing, that usually we try to put in about 80% of our effort in outreaching and connecting with underrepresented populations, and then about 20% of our effort at getting general comments. And again, that isn't to say that the general population is only 20% important. It's that we find that it's easier to get comments from folks who engage a lot, to put it that way, right? I mean, there are some folks that will show up no matter what we do. We know they'll be there, and that's great. And we want to hear from them, and that's important. But what we're really trying to do is try to find the ways of accessing the folks that tend to get that, I don't want to say missed, but they don't have the opportunity to provide input, right, or comments and so forth. Mm-hmm. So the way what those look like, it's going to be a range of tools, and exactly which ones they are, Huda is going to be designing here in the short term. And I'll talk about that process in a second. But the tools are everything from putting together meeting in a box kits that community partners can use for listening sessions. So we kind of give them everything they need to guide and facilitate an input session with, if it's a nonprofit that has access to a specific group or a great sector of the community, or interested people. We've had folks in some communities, as they take the survey, say, yeah, I'd love to hold a listening event. And we give them our meeting in a box toolkit that has a facilitator's guide on exactly how to run a conversation. And they have 10 of their neighbors in and do a listening session. So there's listening sessions using a toolkit, so anybody can do it. There's going to be listening sessions that Huda herself will be leading, and that will include a focus on both underrepresented populations as well as the general population. We tend to have some form of large format input, town hall meeting, workshop sort of session would be two kinds of tools. Sometimes we do pop-up events that might be at, like the 4th of July celebration or a parade that the city has, or any event that we know is going to be well attended by the population. We can do sort of pop-up engagement events there. Digital and online engagement tools also, so that people can communicate with us and get feedback digitally. So kind of a range of engagements, as well as then also, as I pointed out, trying to have representatives who come from and can help represent the perspective of underrepresented populations, as well as general residents and businesses, have them baked into the planning team themselves. So those are kind of some of the tools that we might put into play. And so what Huda's doing right now is she is first kind of canvassing the community. Huda's canvassing the community for organizations or potential partners that already have really good relationships or connections, or a base of certain demographics, underrepresented demographics. And Colleen, who's our youth engagement lead, is doing the same thing related to youth partners and resources. And of course, there's a school district, but the youth climate entities, other youth groups that might be a great potential partner for accessing youth. So first, we're doing sort of a identification of who are the potential partners, and then Huda is also going to be doing interviews with some folks in the community, both potential partners as well as staff and others, to get a better understanding of the lay of the land. And then she'll come back with a suggested plan that we'll work out with Grace and the team to figure out what specific tools for engagement make the most sense based on what the lay of the land looks like, so to speak.
Okay, well, thank you.
Yeah.
I don't know. Anybody has questions or?
This is Ukasha, and my question, it's 4 a.m. here where I am, so if my question makes sense, that will be fine. If it doesn't, but my question is there a plan that will engage the minority business owners in regards to this topic? And also, when we talk about engagement, there is a language gap. And so how do you guys plan to overcome that? Also, so the other question is,
go ahead.
Yeah, sorry, my second question is, there is a community organizations that are doing this great job of engaging the disenfranchised communities and minority communities, including our organization. So how do you guys plan on involving them in those kind of discussions at this level?
So the first question, in terms of, we would love to include minority business owners as well as minority residents and different representatives of underrepresented populations. And so the way that we can do that is, so right now, as I say, Huda is trying to identify who are those potential partners or nonprofit groups or associations where where we can find those people in those different categories, whether it's a business owner or what have you. So what I would definitely like to request is, if you know of any groups that are active in Edina that you think are good that have a good connection with a kind of a target population that we definitely want to talk to, like minority businesses, we would love to, if you have if you just know the name of the group, we'd love to have that name. If you know somebody there where you could maybe do a little introduction with just a little email introduction or something, that would be awesome, because Huda will be doing outreach interviews with those potential partners to figure out how can we make connections with the folks that they're already connected with, because that's what we find to be the most successful kind of accessing a wide range of folks. As far as translating, which is I think what the other aspect of that, so there's two ways that we can deal with that. One is by, our hope is that by partnering with groups for engagement, so we'll have an engagement that Huda will be leading, we'll have engagement that Huda is supporting, and we may have engagement that we're providing facilitation content and materials, and a partner may be doing on their own, depending on what their interests are. But for those events where groups are holding their own meetings, we're hoping that would help with translation considerations, where language is not a barrier there. If it's a partnership with Huda and a partner, we're also hoping that might help. And then for sort of city promoted engagements, we may, maybe we should be talking about interpretive services for some of those events. So that's something that we can certainly be talking with Grace as we plan those out, what's appropriate for the community. So again, oh, go ahead.
Yeah, again, to refresh my brain, it's 4 a.m. again here. So is it only a focus in Edina or the state in general?
It is a City of Edina plan.
Okay.
And just a plug then, so if anybody knows of any group whatsoever that you think has good access to anybody, any kind of demographic in Edina, please, forward your thoughts to Grace. And we'll kind of collect those up, because now's the perfect time for that. If you think Group A would be an awesome partner for us to talk to, we would love to talk to them. So any thoughts you guys have will be fantastic.
And I'll send
Okay,
an email.
Sorry.
Oh, I
Grace.
was just going to say, as one of the follow-up actions, I'll send an email to this group making the specific request, so that you kind of pings your memory and you can send me the organizations or individuals or specific concerns and questions that we can make sure get incorporated into this first round of engagement.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. So I don't know if anybody has any more questions regarding the climate action plan. I guess they will come eventually. So we will send it to you, Grace, or how can we do that eventually? Somebody else has any more comments or something? Can we send it?
Yeah, I'll mention that, we're early on in the process. We had our kickoff meeting with staff this week with Pale Blue Dot. We're kicking it off this evening with the Environment Commission. But especially as the planning team comes together, the EEC will receive monthly updates on the climate action plan, and that will be a two-way dialogue. So that will be every meeting, there will be a chance to ask questions, receive information. As Ted alluded to, members of the EEC are invited to be a part of this planning team. So those members who are a part of that team will be involved on a even more regular basis. So this is not the only time to have this discussion. This is just the beginning.
Okay, perfect. Well, Ted, thank you very much for your time. It was really very, very informative.
Thank you very much, everybody. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ted.
Bye.
Okay, so continuing with the agenda, our sixth item on the agenda is revision of the work plan. And we're going to start with initiative number 5, which has to do with the Green Business Recognition Program. I guess Anna and Peter are presenting.
Yeah, and I'm Hilda. I'm just going to give a little brief overview for our new members.
Perfect. Yes. Sorry.
So the city has implemented a green business recognition plan, and it basically recognizes businesses that have taken sustainable actions. And so basically it's an application process online, and there's certain actions that businesses can take, and those are assigned points. They tally up the points of all the actions they are taking out of the whole list that is available in the application. They tally them up, and if they get the minimum amount, and it's a tiered program with bronze, silver, and gold, if they get the minimum of each category, then they would get recognized. So it has been in place over a year, and we are now in the evaluation phase. We've got, so basically myself, Anna, and Peter went through the evaluation process, and we have a little presentation then on our findings. So Peter had to leave, so Anna, you and I will just take it on, and I'm going to share my screen. And hang on. There we go. Okay, so there we go. Go for it, Anna.
Great, thanks, Michelle. So our goal was to evaluate how effective the Green Business Recognition Program was, like Michelle just mentioned. So we sent out a survey to like several participating businesses and a few that haven't participated yet to get feedback from them. So for the businesses that have participated, just like asking them how their experience was with the program. And for the ones that haven't participated, just like wondering why they haven't wanted to participate or they haven't chosen to participate. We got 7 responses from businesses that are already recognized by the program, and we didn't get any from businesses that haven't been recognized. Can you change the slide, Michelle? So one of the most important things we asked was how easy it was to find the information about the program and how easy it was to complete the application. So overall, it seems like filling out the application was a pretty simple, easy process for the businesses, but finding the information was a little more difficult. And the reason for that could be just because you have to go find it in the city's website, and that might be more of a complicated process. But despite that, it seemed most businesses were able to find the information pretty easily. Another question we asked, which we felt like it was very, really important too, was if the application gave them any new ideas of sustainability efforts they could implement, in addition to the ones that they had already checked that they were implementing. And 4 of them did say yes, which we felt was a really great response. So many 2 of them implemented composting efforts, and 2 other businesses implemented started to create a green committee or something similar to make sure that more sustainability efforts are implemented. So one of the main motivations for businesses to apply was environmental concerns, which we felt was a really good thing, because it shows that businesses are aware of the problem we're facing, and they're aware of the role they play in the solution. And then another high motivation for them to apply was financial savings, which is also good, because the efforts or the actions that they had already implemented hopefully were able to bring them, or were able to help them save them money. We asked the businesses if they displayed the placard they got, because it is one of the main ways in which the businesses show their recognition. And 5 of them did say yes, but 2 of them didn't. And we feel no, go for it, you can change it. We feel this window cling is very important, because most businesses didn't promote this recognition in any other way. So that's one of the main ways for customers and other people to know that these businesses are more sustainable and have been recognized. So adding on to that, most businesses feel their customers aren't aware of their recognition. And although this might be maybe this is more we're not their responsibility, but they maybe have more of a possibility of sharing this with their customers in one way or another, the green business here, you can see through communication platforms, they manage to share it with their customers and other people. But we were thinking that maybe this might be something that the city could help them more with. The city does help them share this recognition through the newsletters that are sent out, but maybe there's more opportunities for us to help them share this recognition with their customers. And then most businesses did see some value, anticipated value. We're not really sure what the anticipated value was exactly for each business, but we feel since most businesses say that their anticipated value was a 4 or higher, we feel that's a pretty good outcome. But we definitely do want to work on making this value higher, just to make sure that more businesses are encouraged to apply. Do you want me to continue?
Michelle, you're on mute. You're muted.
Okay, sorry about that, everyone. So this is where Peter would step in, so I will take over his part. So the good news is all the respondents said that there was no downside, so that is a good thing. And all but 1 of the businesses said they wanted to reapply. So again, I think that says a lot, or goes a lot in our evaluation on whether to continue the program or not, because most of the businesses who've done it do want to continue. So then what is the conclusion of our evaluation? And we basically looked at it from these two questions of, have we reached our goals? And then, is it worth the time and effort put in? So what were our goals? It was to engage businesses to help the city reach its goals of GHG reduction. And actually this, the recognition program is a strategy that was developed and put into place from the PI process, Partners in Energy. And so, you know, it is a strategy that was recommended. And the main reason is that it's hard to engage businesses. Well, we actually created the Business and Energy Working Group to reach out to businesses to try and engage them and help them reduce their GHG, because we found that, well, that 60% of the emissions and energy use comes from the commercial and industrial sector. So if we don't engage businesses, the city is not going to be able to reach their goals. So this was a strategy to try and just reach out to businesses, have a reason to connect with them and talk about the issue. So yes, it's been good. We've been able to go out, and if people haven't even applied, at least we've been able to try and have some conversations about it. So I think it is a good tool to engage. And the other reason was that we've got businesses that are currently doing great things, and we want to celebrate that, especially because Edina residents find that, or that's important to them. So I think it's important for us to be able to connect our businesses with our consumers that want to shop at places that are doing the right thing. So it's just one application that applies to any business who wants to try and get recognized. And part of that is not just so they can tick off the things that they are already doing, but like what Edina said, is that it's also a list of all possible actions. So we want it to be inspirational, so they can say, oh, you know, I didn't realize that's going to be helpful, and they might take some action. And like Anna said, we've got 4 businesses that actually were inspired to do some other things because they saw it on this list. So yes, it has proven to reach that goal. And then the other thing is we want to try and be a partner with businesses to take action and provide resources. And so we do have on our website some links to some resources. I feel like we could try and even encourage that more. So again, that's something that we can do to also help improve the program. So then the other question is this worth the time and money? And Grace, I feel like there should be some input. I mean, I've got written the approximate hours per year that staff would take. And I kind of guesstimated the hours for volunteers and then the budget in there. And from our group's point of view, we felt like this was worthwhile. Again, Grace, I might defer to you to see. I don't know what the time is in relation to what your staff is committed to. So I don't know if you want to chime in on that, but from our point of view, we felt like from the hours put in and money put in, it was worth it.
Yeah, I would just chime in at this point that the city has me. They have a single sustainability staff, and so it's a huge boon when city staff can partner with volunteers and commissioners on keeping these kinds of programs moving forward. So, I would say it's feasible at the level it is. I think part of your recommendation might include an expansion of the program. And so, we would want to talk about what that looks like. But I'm glad to see that the evaluation has resulted in overall positive results.
Great. Yeah, so then with 2 questions that we were asking ourselves in the evaluation, with both of them being yes, I think we would then recommend continuing the program. We did realize that there's some updates we'd like to make, and a lot had to do with just the application itself. Talked about having more information just, when they go to fill it out about the application. We got a couple comments, and we've heard from other people and even just people in our group that the businesses look at this big application, and as they go through, they realize a lot of these actions that don't pertain to them because they're just tenants. They don't own the property. They can't change the HVAC system or the sprinkler system. So I think stating that more obviously in the intro, because we also talked about how if you have multiple applications, I think that's going to make more staff time and just more confusion. And how do you where do you steer a business to which application? And the other part was having that be this inspirational document. I want everybody to see all the possible options. Like, for instance, somebody said they can't plant a rain garden or pollinator plants out on their yard because they don't control the landscape. However, they could pot a pollinator friendly, just pot next to their front door. So yeah, so like I said, we want it to be inspirational, but we need to definitely lay that out in the beginning so people don't seem frustrated and they kind of understand why that's there. And then questions more about the business themselves. We ask if they're a tenant or a property owner. And I think having just even more upfront information about that business would be helpful in the beginning. And then Peter, which I'm sorry he's not here because he had an interesting idea about the percentage or about scoring, and he talked about having percentages of what's feasible for you to do against the percentage of what you actually are doing. And I think it's intriguing. So I think we're going to kind of just explore that a little bit more, but I'm not even going to try and explain it further because he's got the idea in his head. And I think, as you saw in the slides, the couple things that I think we can improve on is just marketing both the program to businesses and somehow promoting their recognition, which isn't super easy. We've done a couple things. Like I said, there's 4 times a year, there's a press release the city does, and we had something on the About Town, and I think there was even something in the paper. But it is interesting that, again, people are looking at all different types of media to get their news. And so, it is hard to reach out to everybody, but it would be nice to find ways that we can find, just throw in a lot more value somehow. And then one of the businesses mentioned, just as far as resources, we do have it on the website, but he made an interesting comment of putting like a link right next to that action on that application. So if they're interested in doing it, they could just click on a link. So maybe adding some links on the actual application itself might be helpful. And there was something that just popped in my head that isn't on here and I just forgot it. But so those are some of the things that I think we can change, and adding a couple more, like I said, actions that pertain more to tenants, because it looks more heavily geared towards property owners, but yeah, so we kind of made a list of possible new actions that we might add to the application. And then just one other slide, just looking around in the country to see if there are programs like this out there, and there are. The 3 individual cities have their own thing like we're doing, and it's very similar. Where you fill out a form and they actually have kind of similar points and different tiers. But what's interesting is the Green Business Network, that in California is kind of the state's program. And so this is like so for any city or county in the state of California, it runs through this program. And then Green Biz Tracker is interesting because it is actually a program that, like, if the state of Minnesota wanted to implement this statewide, they could go and contract with Green Biz Tracker and create their own program. And they have 6 or 7 states that actually are doing that. So like Illinois, Colorado, Washington, and a couple others. So I just thought that was interesting that they have a whole statewide program. So any questions for Anna or I?
So Michelle, I do have 2 questions. I think that it's a good program. I think it should continue. But how can we bring more businesses? Have you thought about it? Because it would be great to have more businesses. And I was telling Anna that probably if we try to link it to an incentive, but that Grace has to do with the city. I don't know if that's possible, because they saw that it's good. Like 6 out of 7, they saw it's good. They do it for environmental sustainability reasons, and they are happy with it. They are showing it off. But how can we but sometimes business needs a type of incentive. So I don't know, have you thought maybe of an incentive that can bring more business to the program? Because I really think it's a good program and we should be having more businesses on it.
Yeah, and that's something that moving forward is what we want to look into. Because yeah, I mean, what we found is when we actually went and spoke with an individual business, we got a lot more, it was a lot more effective. And so spending time doing that is helpful. That's a lot of volunteer hours, but it was probably the most effective. So then outside of that, trying to figure out how to do that. And I think that's just something that hopefully, and we didn't dive into kind of what those actions would be, because we first wanted to make sure that the program was okay or cleared to move forward. But speaking to the 5 new members, we would love to have additional members on our group if this does go forward, because we could use just some input of ideas on exactly what you're asking, Hilda, is that just trying to be creative in how we reach out to businesses, but also even to be creative in how we can then, you know, add more value to the program to the business, like how can we promote it? And just kind of starting to think outside of the box. But yeah, I think that's our biggest challenge of the program, are those 2 things.
I don't know if anybody has questions about the program.
I just had one question.
Go ahead.
Hey, Michelle, maybe I missed it, but you said you had, 7 people responded to the survey, but how many businesses actually participated?
11.
Well, 11.
Actually, you know what? I should say 12, because we actually just got one in and I didn't put it on the screen.
Okay.
Actually.
So, okay, that helps. So 7 of the 12 actually responded to the survey.
Yeah. And only 3 of them gave us their names, so I can't really tell you who all of them were.
No, that's fine. It seems like a great program that would be something that you could easily take out to the chamber and the Rotary clubs in town and get them involved, and have one of the businesses that's already participated perhaps help make the presentation to encourage other local businesses to get engaged.
Yeah,
That's right. That's right. Start.
Yeah, funny that you say that. So right when COVID hit, I had made a connection with a past EEC member who's a Rotary member, and we literally were on his agenda for April to present this, but then we were going through this evaluation process, so we didn't want to present before making sure this was moving forward. And at the same time, I also reconnected with the chamber. We did a presentation to the chamber when we first kicked this off. But there was a new contact that I talked with, I guess, yeah, also last April. And she was very happy to kind of talk about how we can promote it. And then, like I said, it was just at this time of evaluation and we haven't gotten back to that. So I think there's some potential to connect with partners and reach out to more. Yeah, so. Go ahead.
Michelle, so to refresh my memory again, do we have a way that we can recognize these people in the city's website to promote the program?
Yeah, they're all listed on the website underneath the program. Yeah, so.
Okay.
And we are thinking of, again, creative ways of maybe highlighting it somehow. So again, if you guys have ideas, you can send them to Grace or to me. Yeah, or join the committee. It'd be awesome. Anyone who wants to. And Terry, I think you had.
Yeah.
I just had a comment, but I do, for my real daytime job, I do inspections of a lot of multifamily properties, and they already have a program. So if you're open to opening up your business to multifamily properties, a lot of them do participate in programs like this already. They get I think a 3% break on their loan interest or something, so that incentivizes them to do like water conservation, changing out LED lighting, and a lot of other things along that line.
Well, we talked about doing a residential program. So that's something then that would be interesting exploring. Yeah.
Yeah.
And Tom had mentioned it too, like being interested in residential. So.
Yeah, and also the MPCA has like a web page or a map on their web page where it identifies all the businesses throughout the state, including Edina, where they have like permitted emissions permits or wastewater permits, air permits. Some of those businesses might be interested in kind of helping streamline what they have already in place, possibly.
So the MDC on their website has a map?
It's called What's in My Neighborhood, and it lists every single entity that has any sort of permit. It has a leak, an incident, like an underground storage tank or dry cleaners. Anyway, they have air, it's called tier 2 and airs permits. And so those are companies that have already applied for permits to either discharge emissions or to discharge waste. And they're always looking for ways to try and improve.
Thanks.
So it's just another source of getting possibly businesses that would be interested.
Right, great, thank you. Any other questions? Or anybody who might want to join the group?
Yeah, I'll be rejoining the group, Michelle.
Okay.
And one other question is, do you know if we have, like, let's say, a question where we question some of those businesses in the evaluation about the single-use plastic stuff, like let's say the straws and stuff, in those packets?
Yeah, we didn't ask that specifically, but you mean on the application? Yeah, we have all that in the application.
Oh, in the application. Okay.
Okay. So, Grace, do we need to do a motion because we're deciding to keep we need to do a motion to decide if we keep the program, or how does it work?
Yeah, the work plan item is to quote unquote review and decide. So we just heard the review part from Michelle, and so now the EEC should vote on whether or not to continue the program. And if they vote in favor of continuing it, that will give the smaller group that's working on it the green light to actually start implementing the changes that were recommended.
Okay, so I guess should we call for a vote in favor? Those in favor to vote? So I vote in favor. So we haven't done a vote. So I guess should we do the roll calling, or?
We can do a motion. So someone can make a motion to approve, and then someone can pass. We can treat it as a motion rather than an all-out vote. Yeah.
Okay.
I do a motion to approve.
And I second it. So I guess you have to do the roll call, Grace.
Yep. Okay. Commissioner Decane.
Aye.
Commissioner Haugen.
Aye.
Commissioner Haran.
Aye.
Commissioner Havanek.
Aye.
Commissioner Lukens.
Aye.
Chair Martinez.
Aye.
Commissioner Rattan.
Aye.
And Commissioner Tessman.
Aye.
All right.
Okay, so well, perfect. So then we have the program to keep on going, Michelle. So I guess you need volunteers. If anybody wants to join Michelle, maybe they can send you an email. Okay, so well, to continue with the revising the 2020 work plan. Okay, so I'm going to go quickly to the initiatives. So initiative number 1 is the climate action plan that we already had a presentation. So this is this has already been discussed. Initiative number 2 has to do with the development of a to-go packaging ordinance. So I don't know, Michelle, if you have anything to update us about it.
Just quickly, we had two stakeholder meetings that we presented the ordinance to. We had a couple people from the restaurant industry at each meeting. We didn't get any pushback. We just had a couple questions. So I am in the midst of adding that to our report, and then Grace, you can tell us what comes next.
Yeah, so we'll hear from Michelle once the report is complete. And this initiative is ongoing through December, so this is an initiative that new EEC members could join.
Okay, so after this, Michelle, you're gonna present the report maybe by next month, or when are you planning to do that?
Yeah, so the report itself is pretty much, is like the first draft is pretty much finalized. So it's just more of like reviewing it and making sure we have everything we need. Then it would be probably putting together an ordinance, like the actual details of it. And I think having input on what that looks like is gonna be important. So I think that would be where it would be helpful to have some input on members or with new members. And then I would probably just take all that, I believe, right, Grace? And then be ready to present to the EEC?
Yeah, so this would come to the EEC as a completed package, an ordinance and recommendation, and then it would move to the council. So the final action of this initiative is to present a report and a recommendation, which can include a draft ordinance, to the council for consideration.
Okay.
And so for those who might be interested in joining, some of the things that we would want to grapple with are like just that reside in the details, which I think are important. So you've got like Minneapolis, they don't consider forks and knives utensils as a part of their packaging ordinance, but you have St. Louis Park, they call their ordinance zero waste. They are really geared to going zero waste. And so it's important for them to get rid of all single-use plastics. So for their utensils, businesses have to have them be compostable. So there are those little differences in details, and it'll depend on kind of, you know, how we want this to go and how aggressive we want to be. You know, St. Louis Park goes as far as they just implemented last year, where you can't just have for the paper, for single-use cups, the hot and cold lids and cups. So if you provide a recyclable cup, you have to have a recyclable lid. If you have a compostable cup, you have to have a compostable lid. And that's because they found that most people just throw the lid and the cup away together. So they want to combat contamination as well, where I don't think that language is in the Minneapolis ordinance. So you've got similar ordinances around the state, and St. Paul is going to come out with theirs. But we would be kind of in charge of making those detailed decisions. And I think it would be good to have enough voices there to really make sure that we are, we're just being smart and we're being ambitious, but, you know, also thinking about a lot of other things. So those are kind of the decisions that would be made if you joined the working group.
So I had I was wondering if I did put together a presentation on how a country that is developing have changed those habits to, you know, support the sustainable development and growth. In my trip here in Kenya, I've sat down with different stakeholders and also in different entities and community members to see how the plastic bag ban and also the to-go ordinances, the to-go single-use to-go ordinances have changed a lot. As a matter of fact, I did have this straw with me, which is a habit that I've tried to develop in my home right now, to use the reusable straw for every stuff that I'm kind of drinking. So I did put together a good presentation from different perspectives, and I was wondering if I can present on our next meeting. It's the same presentation that I'll be presenting in schools to encourage people on how a single small habit can be changed, which doesn't do anything, you know, like bad rather than good. So what do you guys think?
I don't know, Grace, what can he, I guess maybe the information will be useful for part of the report of Michelle, I don't know. but I don't know. You know, next meeting we have a presentation of the Hennepin Climate Action Plan. So I don't know if we can include Ukasha, Grace. I don't know what else do we have in the agenda, but maybe we can evaluate that.
Yeah, and Ukasha, you and I can work together offline, but I think that it would make a lot of sense within the work plan initiative to include it. So you can let me know kind of the timing and we can make sure that we have enough time in April. If not April, then May. But let's plan for April, but we can email back and forth on it. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, perfect. So the next initiative has to do with coordinating and tabling city events to educate and communicate on organic recycling. But that initiative doesn't start until June, so we don't have anything to report here. Initiative number 4 that has to do with the city green building policy will be presented by Grace in the next session. Initiative number 5, which has to do with the business recognition program, has already been presented. Initiative number 6 that has to do with review and comment on the Conservation and Sustainability Fund is also going to be presented by Grace in the next section. And our last initiative has to do with review and commenting. This is a joint initiative with the Transportation Commission, and it has to do with recommendations on organizing trash collections. But this is the leader of this initiative is the Transportation Commission, so they are working on a document that they will share with us for our comments. I think this is an ongoing initiative. They haven't finished it, so as soon as we had something, they will share it with us. Before going to the next session, I just want quickly for all of you to take a look at that parking lot, because there are like 10 initiatives there that were established there because we already had a lot of initiatives in the work plan. But next week I'm going to present an update of the work plan to the City Council, and we have the opportunity to include any of those initiatives if we think we want to work on them. So I don't know if you had, like, the new commissioners had the opportunity of revise the work plan that I sent you a couple of weeks ago. And I don't know if the current the members that were already in the commission had any idea if they want to work in any of those initiatives. If we don't think we want to, we don't have to, but I don't know, for example, I like the first one. I guess it has a lot to do what you were mentioning, Michelle, about the, like, maybe thinking about homes, like maybe grading them. I don't know if we want to work on that. But if we don't think we want to work on anything of those, it's okay. So I just want to go, I want to open the floor for discussions. If anybody has any comments.
Hilda, is the plastic bag policy one being covered as part of the to-go initiative, the number 2?
No, it's not covered. It was discussed, but we decided to focus right now only into to-go packaging. Michelle, can you maybe give a little bit of why we decide, because you were working in that initiative that has been, in 2016, I'm not sure, maybe Michelle can help us. They already did an analysis on the plastic bag policy. And Michelle, do you know why it didn't move forward?
I think they just kind of tabled it, and actually, no, I can't even remember the details. It was more like, you know, St. Louis Park went through the whole process, and they decided to hold off because they felt that the lightweightness of the plastic bags wasn't worth, like, the issue wasn't as worth going into it. They weren't looking at it from a standpoint of, they were looking at a standpoint of waste reduction. And what they found is that it wasn't really adding or decreasing waste whereas like Minneapolis passed it, and their goal was to reduce like pollution. And so I think the council kind of just took more like the St. Louis Park's lead and kind of just tabled it for the moment. I think I want to keep it separate because I don't want a to-go policy or ordinance not to pass because it gets bogged down with the plastic bags. It does make sense in a way to have it together, but I think we can pass the plastic or the to-go package, no problem. And I think then we could easily follow up with a plastic bag policy. But I don't want it to get bogged down. I guess that's just my initial reaction. But I don't know.
That makes sense. That makes sense. But Michelle, I'm happy to help you with number 2, and then we can take on plastic bags next year.
Yeah, no, I think that will just kind of set the stage. But we already have a report that we wrote. So it would be really easy to update that. So I think it would be a good thing to dive into after the to-go packaging.
Okay.
Anybody else have questions?
I have a question.
Yes.
So were these parking lot issues like struck down by council or tabled by council, like moved? I guess I'm confused as to, or is this just like the commission's list of stuff that we'd like to get to at some point?
This parking lot is some of the initiatives that we discussed last year, like together with that previous 7 that we are working on. We discussed some of these things, and eventually the whole commissioners decide not to move them forward. But they are there. If eventually we want to work on any of them, like this will be the moment to decide and try to present it to the council and see if they approve it. That doesn't mean if I present this next week, it won't mean that they will approve it. We have to make a case if we want to work on any of those.
So is our only opportunity right now to do that, or is that an ongoing thing?
I guess, yes. I don't know if there's going to be another one, right, Grace?
Okay.
I will flag that on June 15th, the Environment Commission will present to the City Council during its work session on their progress on the work plan to date. And that will be the other opportunity, I believe, to recommend an amendment to the work plan to include new initiatives. So we have, kind of a phase 1, phase 2 kind of thing.
So yeah, like maybe we can, because what I understand is we cannot bring new ones, right? There has to be the ones in the parking lot. So we don't have to move any of those if we don't think we want to, because we have to work on them. It's not, so I know this is new for you. I know there's a lot of information for you, I guess. This is too much for the first meeting, but we don't have to do it now. We have like 3 months, and if you think any of those initiatives that are in the parking lot, you are interested in moving them forward, we can try to do it for the June meeting.
So Hilda, oh sorry, I was just gonna say the research enforcement of state law requiring water sensors for irrigation systems. I remember we put that in there because there actually is some legislation about that, and but you don't hear much about it. So I wonder if that's something that we could mention. I know that although a past council member kept bringing it up, but she's no longer on the council, but I feel like that's something that might not take too much energy, just because I think it's just researching and then finding out if that's something that we can enforce. But I wouldn't mind finding out more about that if anybody else thinks it's worthwhile.
And you know, I remember that there was some community comments regarding that. Was it, yeah, like the rebates program that I think the state had. So yeah, I think I don't know if any. I will be happy to work on that if anybody else wants to work on that, because I know you, Michelle, has a lot in your plate. So I don't know if anybody is interested in
Can you just, I'm just kind of missing something here. You're talking about looking into something with the parking lot and then the landscape sprinklers, and I kind of missed, maybe I missed email.
The parking lot is just like is this list of initiatives that we have there standing by.
Oh, okay.
That's what we call them. It's just the term.
Oh, got it.
It doesn't have to do anything with the parking lot with the water. So these are eight initiatives that are down there, and if we decide to we want to move one forward, we just want.
I see. Okay, got it.
Yeah, somebody else called them bicycle rack. It depends. Okay. Yes, John, go ahead.
Is there
So
question on the parking lot item?
Wait. Sorry, John was talking. Sorry, Rajiv.
So in terms of I guess some of these, frankly, some of these lack context and really don't really mean anything. So community-wide environmental event, listening to what the community is saying. As an example, it's fairly abstract. Advocating for street sweeping. I mean, I'd love my street to be swept, but I feel like that's a call to public works. I'm not really sure what that means in this context. So is there any way that is there more context that can be provided on these, or is it just this?
No, yeah, they're basically ideas that came when we were doing the work plan for discussions, and yeah, there's no much more context than this. Besides the water, I guess there was a community comment regarding the rebates that the state has for water and saving tools.
I don't mind.
It's a good one.
I'd be happy to research that and find out if that is true or not, that there is a rebate.
Yeah, there was, but I think the main issue here was, and that's I guess why we didn't move it forward, that the rebate has like an end date.
Okay.
Like it's not like open like every time. It has like a end date, so that's why. I don't know if they do it yearly or seasonally, or I don't know, but yeah, that they had a rebate, but I don't know. By the time we received a community comment, the rebate program was already closed.
Okay.
But yeah.
I can research just that line item. That wouldn't take me very long at all.
Okay.
And then we can either take it off the list or.
Yeah, sure. So yeah, or maybe like we don't need to move any of those, but just like eventually in around September, in August, September, we have to start working on the 2022 work plan. So maybe you can start thinking about any initiatives that you want to work in or are interested in besides the ones here. Some of these will move to the next year. Some of them won't. So just keep that in mind.
So the community-wide
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Akasha.
So the community-wide environmental event, listening to what community is saying, can that mean like partnering with community events? Right now, there's an event that's coming up that we've partnered with a local women group who have been at the forefront of climate solutions in celebration of International Women Month, which is March. They will be hosting Women in Climate Solution event that will be virtual. So I was wondering if there's a way the city and the EEC can support that.
Well, not as a part of our working plan, but I don't know if we can partner with them, Grace, as just a city activity. I'm not sure. I guess Grace has to guide us here.
Yeah, I think it's something we could promote if it's since it's this month. That might be a little bit of a quick turnaround for the communications team. But Ukasha, send me the link, and we can see what we can work out. And certainly, what I would suggest is put it in that the 2022 idea plan, and we can include it. Keep it in mind for our 2022 events as well.
Okay.
Okay, somebody else was talking after you, Michelle. You were gonna say something.
Oh yeah, just to give some context to the first one, develop a program with realtors. That kind of came about as we were kind of talking about giving value to businesses and something that they can promote, thinking about sellers or owners of homes, if they've taken action that has made their home greener, if there's a way that that can be promoted if they were going to sell the property, you know, so that their property actually is shown to have more value, or it's a line item somewhere that shows value to the person purchasing it. So that was kind of what we were talking about there, is trying to create some partnership with realtors or something in which, you know, me as a homeowner and I put solar panels on my home, that adds some value when I'm selling it. So that's what that was. And then
yeah, Michelle, I would like to build a little bit on what you're saying on that one. You know, in this newsletter that arrived from the city, they have this new, I think it's an agreement with the CEE, I don't know, the Center for Energy and Environment, I think, which has to do with trying to make your house more energy efficient. So I don't know. I know they do like a visit and they try to help you out. Eventually, they do small actions that they do in your house, like, you know, change the bulbs, or how do you say, insulate some pipes. And they also do an they check your insulation and try to see if you need to do major things in your house. So you don't have to do it, but you know if your house needs to do more insulation in order to be more efficient. So I don't know if this idea can be linked to that, or use the information you get with this through this program that the city is promoting.
Hey, team, sorry, I gotta jump. I'm ready for.
Yes, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah.
Yep. Thanks, Rajiv. Bye.
Thank you.
So, well, we don't have to do it, but just I guess, like, what I will tell you now is keep ideas in your head that you want to bring to the discussion for the 2022 work plan. Okay, so I guess the next item, it's the elections. So do you want to talk a little bit about that, Grace?
Sure. Yeah. So typically, every commission holds new elections for chair and vice chair. Those are held in February of each year. But as you might not be surprised to learn, the Environment Commission, with 5 open seats, did not have a quorum in February. So we were not able to hold elections at our last meeting. And so instead, we are holding them at this meeting. And we know that 5 of you are new, and so, you know, you're getting to know each other, you're getting to know the work plan. This is another one of those kind of logistical, keep us in the same cycle of elections as the rest of the commission. So Hilda, I think you can take it from here as far as opening it up for the nominations.
Okay, so this is a little bit awkward, to be honest. Because 5 of you are new and you really don't know us, but, you know, me and Michelle were asked to be chair and vice chair because of the vacancies. So we've been in this position, well, I've been, I think, 5 months, and Michelle, I think 2. So we both would like to keep doing this for a year. So I know it's an awkward petition to propose ourselves, you voting for us, but, well, besides, if anybody wants, we can always have a discussion, but I don't know. So yeah, I'm proposing myself, and I'm proposing Michelle to be the vice chair. So I guess now we need to vote.
Yeah, so we just want someone to second that nomination, and then we'll go through the vote. Great. Okay, so we will, and I'm sorry, who made the second?
John.
Great, thank you. Still learning voices. Okay, so we will walk through the roll call. Commissioner DeCane?
Aye.
Commissioner Haugen?
Aye.
Commissioner Haran?
Aye.
Commissioner Hovanek?
Aye.
Commissioner Lukens?
Aye.
Chair Martinez?
Aye.
And Commissioner Tessman?
Okay, well, thank you. So now we're almost there. Our next item in the agenda is the staff comments, and this is where Grace is gonna talk about two of the initiatives. One of them has to do with the green building policy, and the other one with the CAS fund. So, Grace, go ahead.
Sure, and I would offer Hilda maybe one option. So I know that we're already past 9, and maybe what I would suggest, not to cut the discussion short, is if we move the green buildings policy discussion to next month, because I think that's a longer discussion. And we can still talk about the CAS fund tonight, because that I think is going to be shorter. So I think it would be up to you. We would need to, you as chair would make that decision. But I think the green buildings policy is probably a 20-minute conversation.
Yes, I guess, yeah, for the sake of all the new commissioners, I don't want to come back next month if we keep on keeping them that long. So yeah, I guess we should move it. So I'm gonna ask, should we need to vote about that, or we just can move it?
I think you can make that decision as chair. Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, let's move it to the next session, and then just talk only about the fund, Grace.
Great, thank you. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen here and give you all a little bit of context about the Conservation and Sustainability Fund. Oh, let's see here. Just make this a little easier. All right, so typically, this would be coming to you again. We're a little bit out of cycle this time around. Typically, this would be coming to you in the fall of the year prior to a capital improvement plan being approved by the city. Last year, my position was vacant. The sustainability coordinator position was vacant during the time that the capital improvement plan was approved. And so so I am bringing this to you now for your comment. But I do want to mention that the capital improvement plan that we're moving into now is a 5-year plan. It's 2021 to 2026. It is reviewed every other year. So next year, the EEC will offer comment on any proposed changes. So what is the Conservation and Sustainability Fund? It was established in 2015. It's a dedicated revenue source that comes from utility franchise fees and is directed toward conservation and sustainability efforts within the city. We started receiving revenue in 2016, and it has ramped up and kind of plateaued at about $1 million each year that we have available to us to fund all of the city's conservation initiatives. There's a policy that governs this fund, and the policy dictates that not less than half of the available CAS fund will be dedicated to capital improvements. So on an annual basis, that's about $500,000. This also funds staff time and projects, including the Climate Action Plan. So here is an overview of the total capital improvement plan. You can see that the CAS fund makes up about 3% of this plan, and the capital improvement plan kind of leapfrogs with the operating budget. So the city passes a new budget every 2 years, and in those off years is when the capital improvement plan occurs. So the city's constantly thinking about what are our long-term and our short-term financial needs. So here is a snapshot of the Conservation and Sustainability Fund projects that are included in the capital improvement plan. You can see that in 2021, it's pretty front-loaded. There are about $1.4 million programmed toward capital improvements. And I want to cover a couple points about why that is. So we're starting 2021 with almost $2 million in the CAS fund. And I'm reporting to council on this on Tuesday, so feel free to tune in if you want to hear more detail on that. But essentially with the shift in in conservation priorities, the shift in staffing, we have a surplus, and we also have a surplus in needs for capital improvements. So 2021 has about $1.4 million programmed. Subsequent years, you can see that number goes down a little bit and shifts eventually to about $500,000 annually. Just one or two notes on the projects themselves. A lot of this is related to City Hall, and that is because City Hall is one of our, if not the highest energy user within the city building stock. I also want to mention that the city has a green fleet policy, which seeks to electrify the city fleet at as fast a pace as possible regarding technology availability. So we have money programmed here to help offset the costs between purchasing a gasoline-powered vehicle and an electric vehicle, helping to cushion those upfront costs. And then finally, broadly, the city has 50 buildings, give or take, in its building stock, and all of those can afford to have some kind of update to them, whether it's LED lighting, whether it's replacing water heaters with more efficient water heaters or electric heat pumps. Looking at the building envelope, there's a lot of opportunities to make targeted upgrades to improve energy efficiency, and that's what this line item includes. So I want to pause here and take in your thoughts, your questions, your comments on these projects, and maybe the process as well, if you have questions on that.
Anybody has comments?
Yeah, I have a question.
Go
Is
ahead,
there a larger list of projects that haven't made the cut, or is there some idea of payback or like a return from energy cost savings on these initiatives? Is there an expectation of that with any investment that's made with this program, or are these just like, is this funding like capital that needs to be replaced, like equipment that needs to be replaced? Does that make sense?
Yep. To your first question, yes, the larger community or capital improvement plan, does include a list of what are deemed unfunded projects that were proposed, but the council chose to, put in the city's parking lot, if you will, that they're not priority. To your question about payback, some of the spending here, for instance, the City Hall building energy efficiency, which is the bulk of our 2021 spending, part of that is conducting what's called an energy assessment plan, and that is working with a team of engineers to basically work on the numbers of exactly what you're asking, where they are, I think it just kicked off this month, they're doing an overall energy assessment of the building. They'll come back to us and say, these are the list of improvements that need to be made. Here's what they'll cost, and here's their payback period. And pretty much anything that has a payback period of less than a decade is a no-brainer for the city. We want to do that. So yes, we are looking at payback. There's a similar arithmetic available to us on on electric vehicles and those more targeted upgrades, and especially when we're just doing a water heater replacement or an LED upgrade. Two things go into play there. One of them is that there are often rebates that we're applying for, rebates or grants to help us. Excel Energy offers a number of grants related to lighting upgrades, for instance. And then two, there's fairly standard calculators out there, so we don't need a consultant to tell us, if LED lighting is a good investment. We can run the numbers and we can see this is a 2-year payback period, for instance. So yeah, we're trying to understand what is the potential impact. What can we, when can we expect to recoup our investment?
Anybody else? No.
All right. Well, if questions come to you, you all have my email, so don't be shy, and I'll be back in April with the green buildings.
Okay, perfect. So I guess the last item in the agenda is the adjournment. So I don't know if somebody wants to do a motion on the adjournment.
So moved.
So moved.
Okay, so Grace, can you help us with the roll call?
Yes. All right, Commissioner DeCane,
You're muted.
Oh, aye.
Commissioner Haugen,
Aye.
Commissioner Haran,
Aye.
Commissioner Hovanek,
Aye.
Commissioner Lukens,
Aye.
Chair Martinez,
Aye.
and Commissioner Tessman.
All right.
All right.
Okay, perfect. Thank you very much. So sorry it took so long. It's not always take that long, so you're welcome. So I hope to see you
Nice to meet
next
everyone.
month. And if you have any doubts, you can write to me or to Grace or to Michelle. Okay. Take care. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, Hilda.
Bye.
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 Bye-bye.